Morning, everyone. I'm going to do something today that is not anything I've done before. And that doesn't mean like, whoo. I just thought today, after thinking about it, there are quite a few things that go on in this town that, nobody really talks about. And since I had brought up Pauly, Liken Jr. in the previous video and tried to explain what had happened, I thought it was, and again, it's important for his family to speak. I took their clips and I've run them together that the family has included over the past few months, since the beginning, the vigil, everything. And a few of the news clips to talk about, and I've actually included them in this video because it is important. I mean, it's one thing for me to explain it. It's another thing to show it from actually what it was. You're not going to see the videos in their entirety. I'm going to include, like I said, later on. I didn't say like Lincoln's. I've been trying to think about how to word this all day. Because it is so different and it's not something I'm used to. I don't edit videos. I don't usually do that. The last time I edited videos was when I made my game fan videos. So it's been a long time. I mean, I'm not saying I'm bad at it, but it's new. So this is the first time I've done that in a long time. And I'm going, like, I was about to say it again. At the end of these videos, or you can look at them before if you want to, instead of just looking at mine, you can actually click on the links in the description. They will be directly to the entire videos. So the interview, the vigil that somebody posted with all those, I didn't include the one that I know my friend did on TikTok, but I'm sure it's not that hard to find. And I try to walk you through what's going on so you don't get lost. But a lot of people would see like bits and pieces, or, they wouldn't watch their videos into their entirety because they just wanted to believe what they wanted to believe. And so I took the most important sections of it and I included those parts. So, to me anyway. Again, there may be sections of it that may be more important to you. I would really, if you struggle with addiction, I highly recommend watching the interview one in its entirety, because Paul himself is an ex-addict where he's gotten clean and he talks about his journey into addiction, and it is I know what he's talking about. And if you have ever struggled with addiction, you will know what he's talking about. I have once struggled myself. After my second child's birth. It was a very traumatic birth, which is another trauma of mine, unfortunately. But it left me addicted to painkillers because it was a C-section, and it was very messed up C-section. If I could, I had a second C-section with my last child, and I was walking around within the same hour. With him, they actually cut the tendon. So when I went to stand up for the first time, I hit the floor because I couldn't walk anymore. It was like, oh my God, now what? I was on a walker for a while, and they stapled my stomach shut. It was botched. I was awake during the entire surgery, and the morphine wore off halfway through. I was screaming in the OR. My husband thought I was dying. I was just yelling, I can feel it. Because he was literally like in the process, he'd already ripped my son out of me, and he was in the process of cleaning up and stitching me back up, and I could feel everything. It was absolutely horrendous. I became addicted to opiates for a short time after that. So I understand what Paul is talking about. And I really appreciate his openness on it. He even takes responsibility in his relationship where, you know, him and Jen don't get along. But he's since been cleaned. But he also says, you know, I wasn't the best husband. And that's really big of him to do because, you know, you don't see a lot of people do that. They'll usually say, well, maybe if that person hadn't done that, or, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But he's very blunt about it. He goes, no, I was wrong. And it's very, I would love for anybody to take the time to watch the interview. When it stops for a break, as you could see later in the video, I actually sewed 2 sections together after a break. Don't quit watching after the break. Just skim a little forward. And wait for him to come back. That video itself is over, well, it's about an hour long. Actually, if I remember correctly, it's almost 2 hours long. But he, it's worth a watch. It really is. To see a human being who's gone through so much be able to talk openly about his own struggles in life. And he even, you know, shows some humility despite what she had done to him over the past few months. I mean, how awful is it that the way they even found out that Pauly was dead was when it hit Facebook? I mean, as you'll see in one of the videos, they express that. They'll say, we found out through social media. And they really did. And I'll try and catch that part for you. But I'm really hoping that this will shed some light onto the situation from a different perspective outside the news. So that way you guys can see this is the family. This is Pauly's family. This is the one who took care of him, who raised him, who loved him. And they're a great family. You might not like the way they dress or the music they play or the way they dance. Try not to think of it that way. You know, we talk about openness all the time and acceptance. This needs to be accepted too. I mean, honestly, what would you do in their spot? They're hurt. It's so painful. If you had to put yourself in his perspective, try not to cry. Man, I don't think I could be that calm. I mean, I break down even talking about things like this. And he's able to stand there and not even curse. I mean, of course, the rest of the family, they're probably cursing. I can hear them. I heard them. I was there. I was a little far back because, you know, even during the hearing, if you watch the news clips, unfortunately, the cameras caught me a few times. But I was trying really hard to stay out of them because I'm a friend of the family, but they call me family, but I'm not personally related. I was just trying to be supportive because it hurt to see so many people be so mean and not understand what was going on. You know, people need to see what really happened. So I'm really hoping that this will shed some light as to what had gone on. Paul was a great dad. He wasn't the best dad. None of us parents are. We always make mistakes. There's nothing else they could have done. And they blame themselves still to this day about Pauly. And I tell them all the time, it's not your fault. Person's fault is Deshaun Watkins. He did this. Not you guys. You didn't do anything. They kept saying, well, maybe if we've done this. Well, maybe if we would have done that. There is nothing else they could have done. It is not their fault. It is not Pauly's fault either. That one works me up a minute. The moment Pauly was announced to be dead on Facebook, and everybody's sitting there going, Grindr app, he shouldn't have been on there. He's the one who met up with Deshaun, as if it's his fault. And I said, are you insinuating that this is Pauly's fault? And of course, people argued with me, and they were trying to justify that it's not Deshaun's fault. And it's like, it is 100% Deshaun's fault. He killed him. They proved that he even bought the materials to do this the day before, which is why it's first-degree murder. If this was a spur of the moment, I found out that Pauly's, you know, a little boy and not an adult, and I killed him because I was fearful, that'd be one thing. That's second-degree murder, though. This is first-degree murder. First-degree murder means there's premeditation, which means he planned it. Okay? That's how murder 1, murder 2, murder 3 work. You know, murder 1 is you pre-planned it, you did it. Murder 2 is I got enraged and I killed somebody. Murder 3 is I meant to kill this person, but I accidentally killed that person instead. That can also be said as manslaughter. But this is not second or third. This is 100% first. And the case is overwhelming. The information the DA has is not even... I get what the defense is trying to do. But the amount of holes they try to poke through it was almost ridiculous. Because he's on video. I saw the video. You won't see the video. Maybe they'll play it one day. But obviously it hasn't been released in court, but I saw it. I saw him with the suitcase, swinging it down the hallway. Completely empty, obviously. And then when he comes back, he shoves it in the door. It's so heavy, he needs both hands. He can't do it, so he actually kicks it into the door. And he's still struggling to get it down the hallway to his room. Blood comes out, which they later determined was blood on the floor in the hallway. And you see that. And then he kicks the suitcase into his room because he can't pick it up anymore. Why? Because Pauly's in it. I was absolutely shocked that a preliminary hearing showed that video. I was expecting something like that at trial. This felt more like a mini trial. I also wanted to go over, prior to the Pauly Liken's case, a few things in the area that is, may explain some things. Our area, I don't like to do politics. I will say I am a registered Democrat. I absolutely am. And I believe, though, about right and wrong. I don't believe red and blue. It's about right and wrong for me. And if a Democrat is in the wrong, I got a problem with it. If a liberal's in the wrong, I got a problem with it. If a conservative or a Republican are in the wrong, I got a problem with it. Because it's wrong. It shouldn't be. Our area is very heavily Republican. Now, Pennsylvania is a swing state, as they call it. There's a reason for this. And that is because the votes that carry the state to make them red or blue have to do with about 4 different cities. Or 4 different counties, I should even say. Erie, Pittsburgh, or Allegheny, as they say. Philadelphia, and Harrisburg. If you ever looked closer into Pennsylvania's voting map, you will see that if those turn blue and the rest of the state is red, the state is blue. That's because the majority of people, well, they're heavily populated in those areas. We have people throughout the state, but we're pretty rural for a state. The majority of people are in those sections. And they carry, obviously, the most points compared to the rest of the state. And that is our electoral college, But honestly, the rest of the state is mostly red. And it's always stayed red. Now, if any of those go red, that's when the state goes red. But if you travel to Pittsburgh or Philly or Harrisburg or Erie, you'll see that, they have a different kind of perspective. I can't speak, obviously, for everybody in those cities. There are Republicans, there are conservatives, obviously. But it seems to be the Democrats and the liberals Or in this case, even some are, I can't even say that. Why would I say that? There are Republicans that vote blue all the time. My mom's one. She won't vote for Trump. She won't do it. And she is a registered Republican. I know a lot of them around here that are like that. But then you have the ones that are extreme. They actually make you feel very intimidated. You don't want to say you're a Democrat or a liberal. You don't even want to say anything bad about Trump, because if you do, they almost attack you. And I know that might sound really far-fetched, but it's true. As you'll see, even in Pauly's video, you'll see that these people have these umbrellas, these rainbow umbrellas. They brought them there because they intended to do what they did. But only because they're honestly, reacting out of fear too. I believe they didn't know what was going on fully. They knew a little bit, but they didn't know all of it. They knew what one person told them to do, and that was probably the alliance leader. They were told to do this because she was talking with the mom. And I actually also, I kind of pity her too, because I don't believe she knows the full story. I think she believes what mom wants, because mom likes to push and say that Pauly was a girl, even when he wasn't. And now that they've locked into this narrative, as Paul says, how are they going to come back? I mean, it's very hard for an alliance group like that to go so all in and then say, wait a minute, we were wrong. Because then everybody's going to turn on them, especially in this city, especially in this county. We are not a blue state all the time, like people think we are. We're not California. We're not Washington. The alliance is over there. They can say they're wrong all the time, and people go, it's okay. You can be wrong. Over here, if you're wrong forever. So I pity them. I feel they're in a spot where they can't, change their mind about what they said to begin with. They like to say that, Pauly's friends said that he was a girl, and the friends were on the other side of the road, as you'll see. They were with Paul, the dad, and the rest of the family. Nobody on the other side was family at all, or friend. They came for the vigil for Pauly, and all they heard was about other people's stories. And although those people's pain is sad and it should be heard, it shouldn't be, let's use Pauly to get their pain out there. They need to have their own stance where they have their own rally to say, look, this is what's happening to us. But they took the opportunity to say, look, he's 14, he was dismembered, it's horrible, and, quote, he's transgender, even though he's not. Then it becomes we can say this was a hate crime. And it wasn't even a hate crime. He was a pedophile. Deshaun Watkins was a pedophile. That's why they added those charges to begin with. Why else would they? Unless he sexually assaulted Pauly, which he did. He left DNA, which they're waiting to come back. And that's it. Pauly was a 14-year-old child who got lured from an app, which I agree should hold some kind of responsibility for, doing that. When the cop got on the stand to testify, the defense attorney said, how can a kid get on that app? That kid can't get on that app. And the cop said, well, I believe it's like a government website where it asks, are you 18? And you just press yes. And that's exactly what it is. That was the best quote ever for that day, honestly. I was like, like, go cop. He was a state trooper, and he's the lead detective for this. Not even one of our own local cops. It is a state detective who was the lead investigator in this case. Because there was multiple jurisdictions, you can't have a Hermitage and a Sharon collaborating. Oh my goodness, I can't talk today. But I took a trip, so you're going to see some dash cam. And I'll do my best to stop it. I'm going to freeze frame on one area in particular. And it's one of the ones that everybody who travels into our town this direction from Mercer, they see it. It is in your face. You can't even ignore it. And it's not like it's a side road where if you're only traveling down there, you'll see that this is a major road that is used to travel into our town, aside from 80 itself. And actually, these people are the ones that I fear. And I've seen this multiple times in multiple different areas. For the most part, you're just going to see like little signs. There's some big ones. But this one is custom made and designed to intimidate. There is no other reason to do it. You can even see that the neighbor actually supports Kamala. And it reminds me of Fear Thy Neighbor criminal documentary. Like, I can just see the fireworks about to happen between the two of them. They got their signs up in their yard, and these people got their signs in their yard. And they're pointed directly at the family. Like, if you go, I'm going to show you both ways, but if you go one way, you only see the Trump signs. You go the other way that faces this family that's supporting Kamala, and you get the custom sign in their face, which is ugly and mean. And, well, it's why, you know, honestly, in 2020, I was afraid to vote. I was afraid to go out. I did vote. I did. But, like, I had to tell people what they wanted to hear because the voting polls were surrounded by people practically yelling, shoving information in your face. Almost felt like they were trying to scare people away. Like, I didn't see anybody for Biden. It was all for Trump. Just all the magma hats, all the, here's all this stuff. But I went in there anyway, and I voted the way I wanted to vote. But nobody should have to have that kind of fear, you know? It's bad enough for people with trauma to deal with, you know, normal everyday occurrences, or going to, you know, Walmart and worrying about simple things like, please don't talk to me. I mean, that's kind of why I use the self-checkouts. It's not the fact that I don't, you know, trust the cashiers. I don't want to talk to them. You know, I try everything not to. I just want to do my thing, get my stuff, get out, and go home. I've actually taken more advantage of the delivery system just so I don't have to go to the store. I used to remember going to the store just to walk around, but now it just feels very uncomfortable. You have everybody yelling everything. I've gone there once where a woman walked past and she had a little kid with her, and not that I'm against marijuana, but my God, like, the woman smelled like she bathed in it, and she's got a little kid, and you just know she hotboxed the kid. Like, how did you come out smelling that bad with that much marijuana with that kid? Because the kid must have been present. It's one thing for people to use marijuana. It's another to include their children. And I know people will have some controversy on that. They'll say, you know, other medicines don't work. You know, this is the only way to keep calm. I'm a parent that is fully against children using any kind of drug, recreational or not, unless there is a medical purpose for it. And I don't mean for psychological purposes. I mean, because in that case, all you're doing, in my opinion, is postponing the inevitable. That's all you're doing. You are self-medicating so they don't have to freak out. Instead of trying to go to counseling, to EMDR, to something else, to talk about what's going on in their life. If you just give them a drug and say, here you go, be a zombie for the rest of the day, that's bad. You should never want to medicate your child just to make them calm. if they're going to be medicated, there has to be a purpose to it. My children have medication. I'm not going to sit there and say I'm against medication. I'm not. My husband was a marijuana smoker. However, he has an addictive personality, and therefore marijuana is bad for him. Because even though marijuana itself is not addictive, it has no addictive qualities. If you have an addictive personality, it is you are using that to escape reality. You're not using that to have a calm night or, to relax after a long day's work. You're doing it because you can't deal with what's today. You, quote, need it to clean. If you need it that bad, it has become a dependency. You can do this with anything. You could do this with, an obsession with buying things. You can do this with gambling. You could do it with drinking or the recreational drugs, but you can do it with drug-related things. You can turn them into drugs. Anything that becomes an obsession is a drug all in its sense, because you need it. And the idea of not having it actually makes you sick. And that is when it becomes a dependency. And this is why, definitely listen to Paul. Please listen to Paul. I love the way he phrased it. He phrased it exactly the way that I phrase it. He phrases it the way that, I think about it, but sometimes I can't articulate it. It's so great to say, he just said, because I felt bad. Because I felt like I wasn't loved. And this made me not think about it anymore. It made me numb. And that's bad. That's not okay. You shouldn't have to feel like you need this thing in order to escape normal day-to-day activities. Not saying that you shouldn't have medicine to help you through some things. Some people can't help it. I mean, people who are born with bipolar can't help their bipolar. They need their medications. But you shouldn't be on it to the point where you're not you anymore. So I'm going to start out with going over my little dash cam stuff. And then I will move on to the videos in regards to Pauly. I will try and make the other ones quick, I promise. They're going to be faster, I promise, compared to the rest of them. Like I said, I took a trip to the different areas. And I'll walk you through that as I'm doing these videos. All right, so let's start this off. So let's start with, this is Sharon. Obviously, next we are in a different city. This is Hermitage. This is actually the beginning between West Middlesex and Hermitage. The bridge we just went under is 80. And if you want to get onto 80, you actually have to go through 376, which is up above this bridge here. They cross sections here. And 80 is the road that will actually touch New Jersey and California. You can actually travel the entire way across the country, and it runs straight through this town. As you can see, the moment you get off of 80, this is what you're greeted with, is our Hermitage, Pennsylvania sign right at the front here. And then we have our new FedEx building on the left, and there's lights and a golf course. And of course, if you go downtown, we have the night market banner there. And then this is the entrance into West Middlesex. They don't have as nice an entryway as the other ones do. And of course, this is Mercer. They have their banners, their giant courthouse, etc. So our towns are pretty vacant for the most part. This is our Shenango Valley Mall. It is empty. I don't know if you can tell that or if it's that obvious, but we have holes everywhere. It's very difficult to actually navigate without busting a tire or screwing up your alignment. So as I'm driving through, I'm actually trying to be as careful as I can not to hit these giant craters in the ground, and I'm trying to show you them a little bit, but it's hard because you're dodging giant potholes the size of your car. But this was once a bustling mall and is no longer. And then we have, this is closer to downtown Sharon, almost into Sharksville. We have a lot of mills that are almost empty. Now this one is partially working, but for the most part, they're not there anymore. we used to have a lot of workers that came into town, and this is kind of what we did. We have the Sharon mill here, what we called Sharon Tube back in the day. And then, of course, it extends this long. It is this big. So imagine having this giant building that's doing absolutely nothing anymore. It's quite an eyesore to these poor people that have to live across from it. And of course, we have the $1 million general in our area. You know, if when in doubt, build another Dollar General. Once you go around this curve here, you're about to hit into Sharpsville. It's a pretty good curve, but you can actually tell the difference once you get into Sharpsville, the difference between the two. And this, of course, is the other way into Hermitage, just before. Don't ask me why the lights are flashing. They're honestly not flashing. It's just the response in my video. I don't know why. There's a skating rink. We have a car wash. We, of course, have the Honda dealership right there. There is a acrobat type. It's called Twirlers and Taekwondo on the right. So, okay, so let's start here with the Trump signs. So this is the Ohio border. We're still in Pennsylvania, but just a little ways up is Ohio. And if we go back towards Hermitage, we start to see these signs on our main road that goes from Mercer into Hermitage. So that actually is a pet cemetery type thing. And of course, if you're going towards Mercer, you have these very large signs as well. And honestly, these are normal to me. I'm not worried about these signs. Even this one closer to our mall, back into town, even with their giant flag in our face, which is fine. It's not a big deal. These are normal things I'm used to seeing. We start to get a little bit more like this, and here is the house we're coming up to that I was talking about earlier. So as you slowly start to move up here, what you're going to notice is we're coming in the way where I told you that it looks normal from this angle. When you start to approach it, you start to see the blue there in the corner, and when you get closer, it's just a normal Trump Vance sign, you know, nothing out of the ordinary. And on the other side, of course, is the Harris signs for the neighbor. Now, if we turn around and we go back the other way, here we go. This is where these things become a little bit more intimidating. And again, this is a road that normally can't be avoided. As you can see, it's clearly, you know, that way. So I tried to pause it for you. So this is actually what is said. Facing this yard, it is not... Well, it's not appropriate. I mean, you can have your views and you can believe in your politics, but it's almost threatening in a way. And I felt like it might even be directed at the neighbors. So we go back into Mercer. Now, I took a stroll around the courthouse here, and in little variation areas, you can actually walk around and you'll see these little bricks. They're actually dedicated to businesses, to people who have passed on, people who have made a difference in the community that have earned, you know, a brick. So I walked through this as best I can, and I tried really hard to keep myself out of the frame. Unfortunately, it's almost like a U. So when I come back across, you're going to see me step into it. I tried. I'm trying. You can pause these at any point. I hope that the clarity is good enough that you can read these if you want to go back and actually read any of these. There's actually two sections like this on each set of the large set of steps on the back side of the courthouse. And they're almost, you don't even notice they're there unless you're literally walking around the courthouse. So again, it's pretty extensive. And then that plaque we saw at the beginning, she died, of course, in 9/11. And she's right in the middle, right up in there. So now this is the second U-shaped honorary thing. Again, you can pause it if you want to read that if you'd like. But again, it's the brick situation again. So as you can see, you know, the veterans, names of people who made a difference, business names, people that have been known to the community. That's my best guess, actually, of how these bricks trend. To be honest, I don't know how they get here. But, I mean, Joy Cone Company, that is a big company in our town. A lot of people really pride themselves working there. It's hard work. It's line work. And we don't have a lot of that anymore, especially since, you know, the mills have closed down for the most part, or they're not as active as they once were. So instead, we have a lot of memory stones. Again, I'm not exactly sure the process of getting one of these. It says Findlay Township, which honestly is a small little town that doesn't even have its own school. It's so small, they bank off of these other major towns like Sharksville, Sharon, Hermitage, and Mercer, as well as Grove City. But Findlay itself doesn't have one. So if you keep walking, you know, this is actually in front of those unicorns. U-shaped here. You can actually see them off in the corner there, the red brick. But I wanted to focus on these main steps here, as honestly, once upon a time, you could go up them. Now they have these beautiful banners to honor certain veterans that have passed on or who died in the wars. But it used to be you could walk up these steps and go inside. And that would take you straight into Prothonotary, which a lot of people would use. They've since closed that. Now the only way to get in is actually to go to the back entrance, which will actually take you to the basement level. But they still pride themselves on obviously taking care of, you know, the aesthetics of the courthouse. I couldn't film inside because filming's forbidden. You know, if you actually go to any federal building, it'll say, you know, it's prohibited, you can be prosecuted, yada yada. They'll let some news crews in there, as you'll see later. But you know, for the most part, people don't turn their cameras on, they don't record anything. Pennsylvania is very stringent on their wiretapping laws. But for the most part, like I said, they maintain their area. This tree was planted about 15 years ago. They try to honor veterans, Army members, anybody who was in wars, previous or current, you know, and it's a very old school type courthouse. This statue isn't as old as the courthouse itself. Obviously, it's definitely more maintained and newer looking than that. It is bronzed in some areas, and they have this plaque in the front. Once again, you can pause it if you'd like to read it. I'm trying to stay still for you so you get a moment so you can read into it. But it's about, you know, the Civil War, the regiments that were part of it, and of course they have the bronzed artwork on the front. Actually, I would consider this the back. And that's the band area, and of course there's a courthouse. You can see the clock at the top. And you know, they do bands there every Friday. They try. This is a very homey type town. They don't even have a Walmart. I mean, it's that rural. They have very close-knit little shops together. They do these dedications, like to Miss Havishaw, and then they have these other memorials. Honestly, to me, this one actually looks like almost like a cemetery stone. It's supposed to be just present, you know, for the war, and then they have the gar that you would see in cemeteries next to stones for people who have gone into the war. And it says it once held the shell fired from the battleships. And then, of course, we have another bronze painting. This would actually be considered the front. As you can see, it's more geared towards the Civil War. I mean, Gettysburg is pretty close to us, about an hour or two drive. They're trying really hard to memorialize, you know, the struggles of the past. And of course, we had the Vietnam conflict. and the residents that passed away there. They have the memorials. Again, you can pause this if you'd like to read through the names. I, zoom in to your heart's content. I hope it's clear enough. Again, we have these banners. Now, every year, I've noticed that they've either added one, changed one, but it's usually not the same people. Forever and ever, these banners have obviously, they're clean, they've been changed, and it's there to honor those who had fallen, and where they were from and their age. Now, this is the other side of the courthouse, actually completely opposite to that. As you can see, one of the clocks is missing. We actually had a storm that had gone through and struck the building, kind of like Back to the Future. And actually, there was a meme going around about it afterwards. Everybody thought it was quite funny, and they said, "Oh, where's Marty McFly?" Most people, this is how we enter now. We have to enter through this entrance over here. Nobody can go in through these little side entrances. Nobody can go in through the back entrance. Everybody has to go through the bottom entrance, and that includes everybody who's accused. Even the criminals have to go through that entrance where, they'll be scanned, and there's a metal detector, etc., etc., etc. So now what I wanted to go into before we start into Pauly is I wanted to show you a picture first and foremost. So I know we're still in Mercer. Give me a minute. Okay, so here we go. So I wanted you to take a look at this picture, and when you see it, let's just say you were just driving through town and you saw it. I want you to think about what you would have thought it actually was, that was going on. And now I am about to show you what was going on, but just to get you to a frame of mind. So as you can see here, there's the umbrellas across the street. Everybody's walking down the sidewalk. During this part, they were actually asked to move to the other side of the street for their own safety, actually. Not because they had done anything wrong, but because they were going to let out the other group. And as you can see, as they're walking down the sidewalk, they would have ran into the family. Now, here is the majority of the most immediate family. And there's still, these umbrellas, they were awful, because it was almost like they were ignoring them. But nobody on the other side by those umbrellas was actually the family. This is the family. The ones that are most animated are the immediate. Paul back there is the one in red. He's the father. And then his sisters and his mother are actually the ones dancing around him. As you can see, the police actually aren't even looking at the family. They're looking at the spectators on the other side that were leaving the vigil. And mostly because, if you know co-ops, they never turn their backs on anybody. See, they're turning their backs completely on the family. They're very much focused on the other side, because they're very concerned, actually, that they're going to hurt the family, because they're not aware of the situation. When they were first asked to leave the vigil, they actually, the grandmother, Paul's mother, so in this case Pauly's grandmother, she actually yelled out, "That's his son." So everybody thought, we had some guy down there yelling and screaming transgender junk. And honestly, he wasn't with the group. He was just yelling that Pauly was not a girl, which honestly, that's what the family was trying to get across. That's Paul yelling. As you can hear, he's not swearing. They're just trying to make it known that they're the family. And they're hurt and upset. I don't know. I think they're well put together, honestly. They're trying to show that, they're not. This is a vigil for that child. and they were shoved out, and that was so ignorant. I can't even with that. It was so uncomfortable. You could see even other spectators that are getting closer to the family, but they don't know. And Paul was quiet up until this point. And he's the dad. It's his son. He said farce, by the way. As in, you know, fake.
You are here for attention. The first thing they did was set up a GoFundMe. Not grieve, not mourn. They look to profit off of my son's death, and I will not stand for it.
You know, and he's breaking down. And he's right. Actually, when they first had the family leave, the first thing they did was literally say, hey, we have a GoFundMe down here. I mean, it wasn't even like, hey, we're here for Paul Jr., Pauly Liken's, but we have a GoFundMe and we thrive on donations, da, 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 da. It was all about the Alliance. And I stayed to see a little bit of it, and I did watch the videos from the Alliance afterwards, and honestly, there was not a single thing mentioned about Pauly. It was a lot of distortion, a lot of personal pain from other people, their stories. That was what I was getting from most of it. Was, you know, one lady went up there and she was talking about her sister being targeted, and I understand, and that's sad, and I'm sorry that happened, but that's not what happened to Pauly. And this family is having a real problem with that, because it feels like they're using Pauly to further this. And it would be one thing to say, listen, Pauly was transgender, or even say, in truth, he was gay.
My son was not trans. He was gay.
See? He's not even discounting. That's actually one of the cousins. In one of the videos, he's a little kid pushing Pauly in a swing, so he's hurt. They almost feel like it's a disservice to do this to Pauly, which honestly I do too. This is the family. The friends even walk over and join the family who knew Pauly. They're in the background there. I am too, but I'm more further up the sidewalk because I wanted to give the family space. Because they deserve, you know, everything. But the one in red there is an aunt. The one in the pink next to the kid with the black shirt is an aunt and his cousin. And his friend, and there's another aunt who's out there videoing. She's actually the one that's my friend, personally. And, I mean, I love the family entirely, but she was the one I grew up with. And you have a couple great aunts back here, a great-grandmother, and, well, just the family is extensive, and the support for Pauly was great. I mean, when Paul was asked to leave, nobody else had to leave, they chose to, because they just, I couldn't stay. I had to leave. And, because it felt very wrong.
I don't have no cash either.
You know, another person came over, they actually brought them this sign, and they said, we're giving them to you, but we want a donation. And everyone was a little, like, frazzled, like, wait, what? Of course they want the sign, but nobody had any cash on it. Nobody expected it. They're the family. Who expects them to pay for anything? It's not like they asked for their child to be killed. And again, you can see the police are actually not interested in the family. They're not interested in even stopping them from talking. Because the problem isn't the family. The problem is the other side. I mean, they were glaring. Some of them actually, there was a woman who actually stopped me and my children before I even crossed the street, and she got in my son's face. And she said, you see that people, you see that man over there, you see those people, those are who you don't want to be. Like, she had no idea what was going on. I was very tempted to tell her to leave. You know, she had her hand on my son's shoulder as if she had some kind of right to that. I have no idea, you know, tempers were high on both sides, but this side knew what was going on. The other side just assumed they were there to protest, which of course wasn't the case. And here's the aunt, who was also present when Pauly and his little brother were picked up 9 months earlier.
His mother, Miss Jen, put a PFA against Big Paul.
Who's Big Paul?
Paul Sr., which is Pauly Jr.'s dad. She put a PFA
I'm gonna let
against
her
him
talk.
for whatever reason it may be. When
She was served court papers for full custody.
That's right. When Paul Sr. is the one that originally had custody of both of his children, Paul Jr. and his son Mike. They actually jumped Big Paul when he went to go grab Mikey. A big argument and fight broke out, so Senior went to go file for custody, and Mom got the news, got papers, so she went and put a PFA against Paul Sr. so he couldn't have his son.
So there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, we're very sorry for this tragic. It's terrible. It's sad to see that separation. It doesn't. It's hard
It's
to put it in words.
childish on Jen's part for even putting the PFA against Paul Sr., knowing that that's her, Pauly's son too. Like, it breaks my heart seeing my brother go through all of this, and I can't stand it. It's not fair to him. What happened to Junior was far from fair to him as well, and his mom is trying to push this whole transgender thing when it's not the case. Paul Jr. was a 14-year-old gay little boy that did not deserve any of this. And his mom wants to push the whole trans thing. His mom knew for a fact that her son did not have long hair anymore. Junior cut his hair. So why post the photos of the, oh my goodness, I'm angry, I'm sorry. The missing posters, why post the photos of your child with long hair when you know darn well that your son has short hair?
It's a lot of emotion. I can't imagine what you guys are going through. And I'm deeply sorry. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
The fact that his mother is just using this for publicity is cowardly. It is terrible. It's sickening. That boy deserved more than this. All the GoFundMes that they've made that's underneath this Jen, they're going into her pocket. They're not even going for that baby's funeral expenses.
Cash App, PayPal.
The GoFundMes, the PayPals, the Cash Apps, all of it. They're all going for her expenses. None of that's going to that baby. This whole movement, this foundation, this home is crumbling because it's not based on who it should be, which is Pauly A. Liken Jr. I want to swear, I'm trying so hard not to. She's a coward, and it's making a mockery out of her son, and it's not fair, it's not okay. What Jen needs to do is shut up, stand up, and admit the truth. My son was not transgender. My son was gay.
My son was a child.
Exactly, my son was a 14-year-old baby boy who I no longer have, but let me take his death and make it a merry-go-round of joy for me and act sad in front of everybody else, while his dad has been the one to do everything. His dad is the one that has the custody of both Pauly and Mikey.
Who's out every day searching for him? Who's out?
And last I checked,
Every
it was
single day,
Paul
walking train
Sr.
tracks and
that was
everything.
walking the train tracks. Paul Sr. that was going, knocking on everybody's door.
Senior sitting alone by himself down at the bridge by the river, crying. Only saw it because I was driving by.
She was out maybe one day. One
day she looked for her son, and everybody else is out here every day of the week, sun up, sun down. My sister and I walked in the rain. We walked in Willow Village in the rain just to go look for this baby because that was his last known location.
Never see good life.
Really would walk down railroad tracks at 3 o'clock in the morning.
We were walking down the railroad tracks at 3 in the morning, my sister and I, just to go look for this baby. Like, ever since Pauly's passing and the body being confirmed it was his, Junior and his dad and Mikey like to collect marbles. And Senior always told the boys, don't lose your marbles. I was having a mental breakdown about everything in the kitchen, and the next morning my sister found a blue marble in the kitchen. I have found them everywhere ever since. So if that's not a sign from God to do the right thing, then I don't know what else would be.
Period, Bill!
How does Likens find out? How does Likens
Did a
find
great
out?
job.
Oh, I was gonna hand you this.
We found out through social media.
I like the marble thing. I've lost my dad 12 years ago, and it's.
I mean, this man interrupts, but honestly,
Why you come out and punch me in the fucking face, Jen? Why'd you come out and punch me?
Why did he come running
now this clip is 9 months old.
Why?
Do you see you? Guys, get in
This
the
is
car.
when Paul
Guys,
had
get in the car.
his
You sleep it the fuck
Pauly
off.
and the
call me
little one that
tomorrow.
just walked past, the younger son, move in with him.
You sleep it off and call me tomorrow.
Yeah, you call me tomorrow.
No, you call me.
They actually called crying
Because you stole my kids.
and begging for
I
help.
stole your kids.
Yeah.
These are my kids.
Yeah, you fucking did.
They called because
You need help, Jennifer.
Were they?
Yes,
They both called me crying.
it's gonna be alright.
You know what I'm saying?
You can tell she's very heavily intoxicated by this point.
Go sleep it off. You're fucking wasted. Hi, whatever. Look. Oh, are you? You telling me you're not fucking drunk?
Are you telling me you're not fucking high?
No, I'm not. I smoke pot and I have a license to do it.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Do you? Oh, does that make sure you get high every day?
Boy, how you have.
Oh, how? What?
Wow.
What?
Thank you. Thank you. You have a nice life, Jen.
Paul shared this clip himself almost 2 months later.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
He just had enough, which honestly, I don't blame
dismemberment
him at all.
of a teenager last month. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm John Rudder in for Stan Boney tonight.
This
I'm Lindsay
was-
Watson.
I have
For the
two
first
news-
time,
two-
Pauly Liken's
yeah, two
family heard
news
some of the
clips here.
disturbing
And the first one
details
is
as
this one.
Deshaun Watkins
Now, as you can
appeared
see
Mercer
in this
County
news
court.
clip, they never
Tonight,
say
the
the word
family's still
transgender.
looking
They
for
have finally
answers as they
accepted
cope
what
with the
Paul
grief.
had been requesting.
When Paul
the
Liken
father
Sr. set
who
eyes
had
on
been raising
Deshaun
him,
Watkins
who
in a
had
Mercer
him
County courtroom
the
Thursday
entire
morning,
time,
it was the first time he
for the
actually
last 9
saw
months,
the
took him to the
person
doctor, took him to
charged
the
with
dentist.
killing his child, calling it one of the most
everything.
difficult things he's
and
ever
went to
had
this
to
hearing
do.
and was there for the entire 6 hours.
Just on my worst enemy.
Was almost pushed
Watkins
aside.
is charged with first-degree murder in the death of 14-year-old Pauly Likens last month. The victims
ignored.
remain scattered in a number
This
of
picture
locations
is
around
actually almost
Shenango
a year
Reservoir.
old.
Many of Pauly's family
Pauly's hair was
members
actually
were present
short
at the
at the time
hearing,
of his
hearing
death,
the details of
unfortunately.
Liken's death for the first time.
So the most appropriate picture that they had put out there from the family was the one with the beanie as on her shirt.
Nobody deserves what he got.
Investigators say blood evidence was found in Watkins' apartment and car, and authorities also recovered a suitcase and a knife, both of which had blood on them.
There's only one thing that I can say to him. God will only let me wield one weapon. He is the one that has to answer for this when he walks with God on his judgment day.
Mercer County Coroner John Libinati saying Pauly died from what he called sharp force trauma.
A lot
in
of
the form
information
of a
was
half
actually
a dozen
cut from that
stab
clip, and
wounds
that's
to the
honestly
back
why
of the
they were
head
taking
and
it
neck.
the last one.
He was the
because
light of
they
my
knew.
life.
And
He was
actually,
my heart.
that one,
And his younger brother Michael is my soul.
Watkins could face life in prison without parole
That
if he's
last one with the
convicted.
sister,
Meanwhile,
none
Liken's
of it
family
was
members
used.
saying they plan to be there for
So it was
every
really
step of the
important to
process
actually
as a way to pay
show
tribute
that
to the teenager
there.
whose life was taken too soon.
And he was loved, and he knew he was loved. My last words to my son, because I was the last phone call he made. I'm the last person he talked to before this happened, and my last words were, I love you.
We will, of course, keep following.
One clip actually shows where he says, this is the most appropriate picture, sorry. But one of the clips in one of the newscasts actually will show him saying that was his mother. He was a gay male. This is the mother. She honestly was only there from that moment on for about an hour. That was it. Literally, she showed up at noon. And the hearing had already gone on for multiple hours. This is unfortunately where Pauly was killed. Those trees have actually all been cut down since.
That same night, and the evidence collected in his apartment. The defense insists the information used by the prosecution to connect the defendant and Pauly is all hearsay and does not substantiate the charges against
Paul was very reluctant to talk to even the press.
Pauly's father says he knew his son to be gay and proud.
And we were proud.
He was unapologetically.
They actually begged him to come out to talk to them.
With the judge holding all charges for court.
There's not allowed any cameras in the Mercer County Courthouse, so I think they got special permission to do that, to go in there and do that.
Today made the right decision, holding everything to court. And with the continued efforts of
this is the lead prosecutor right now. She has the two extra people there, but honestly, she's the lead prosecutor in this case.
Sharing this reaction walking out of the courtroom.
Justice will take its course.
The other sisters and I took the elevator down.
God's watching.
Watkins will be back in court on September 24th. In Mercer County, Kaylee Gunderson, Pittsburgh's.
100. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, the Mercer County PA Bulletin Board. And
this is really important because this is Paul finally, after all of that, being able to get a chance to actually talk about his child, which nobody has done up until this point. I mean, the family has tried, but no one's listening.
The ugliest possible way.
So this is the first time that Paul actually gets a chance
recently
to talk.
would have had his
this is actually a small
birthday,
clip compared to what is actually there.
Pauly
I'm going to put all the links
in the studio
to
with me today.
The
I
other
have his
videos.
dad, Paul Liken Sr. And I do, I know how hard this must be for you to be in the studio.
So that way you guys can watch them in your entirety.
Really
if
sorry
you want to.
that you had to go through this.
This was so important to include
what caught my eye was that
he's the first one to actually talk about his son
standing on your faith with
and
God,
what kind of kid he
and
was,
that really,
what he wanted in life,
inspired me to reach out and try to
himself.
get a hold of you because not
this is the
too many
first one
people,
where he can actually say,
if any,
without anybody cutting it out, which is why he chose this.
And
I mean, he's never done any interviews since. He just won't, and I can't blame him.
Don't not have a nervous breakdown. I mean, anybody. And by the way, I apologize. A few weeks back, we had a young 14-year-old murdered in Mercer County. They were actually looking for him at first. We announced that on our show when they were looking for him, and then unfortunately, a few days later, they had found him, dismembered. And it's probably a parent's worst nightmare. That I don't think there is anything, worse that we can ever deal with losing a child. Anybody who's lost a child,
get back to you when it's done. So please listen to Paul.
With that said,
he has great things to say
if it's
about his
okay
child.
with you,
and
Paul,
to explain everything
I'd like to
about
start
him.
off with who was your son? Give us a little bit of a background. All the pictures I've seen. He always had a smile on his face. He seemed really happy.
Minor in the area.
And that's awesome. And who was your son to you?
This was a great
and
interview
to your
for
family
him to actually get everything out that he needed to get out. And it's so sad that it was not heard around the world like all the transgender things.
He walked in the living room.
It was better to come from the father, the person who knew him best.
He loved going out in nature with me and taking photos. The sunset was his favorite time of day, and we always went on sunset walks. We were planning his 15th birthday party. He had asked me about it Friday before I went to my cousin's with his younger brother Michael, and we were supposed to plan it out when I got home on Monday afternoon after work.
Was that album picked out already? Did you know what it was going to be?
He just wanted to have friends over and have a slumber party, games, music.
Yeah.
He loved music.
Yeah. But what were some of his favorite bands?
I'm not good with all that. I mean, he listened to Material Girl. He liked that song. It made me chuckle. Some Flyleaf. He was all over the place. He liked good music.
Nice. So, you're talking about his birthday party. that week up to that, do you have any memories you could share with us the week prior to everything happening?
Well, for the week before, we went on a few walks out in the woods, watched a few sunsets. We just hung out. He was always with his friends and stuff. And 14 years old, he'd rather be with his friends and his dad.
Yeah, I think most 14-year-olds would rather be with their friends. I definitely hear that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, we were talking off air a little bit, so I guess I didn't know some of the things that you shared off air. And one of the things that was a little bit scary to even think about when you told me was that you sadly read about this on Facebook, right?
Yeah. And I got a phone call from my cousin telling me to go on Facebook.
So what that, I mean, God, I can't even imagine. So you go on Facebook, you see, so explain that whole situation.
I just came across a couple of things that said in memory of and rest in peace. And I didn't go read any news articles or nothing. I just shut my phone off because I knew it was about to, and I needed time to.
Yeah. So you actually had to call the state police, you were saying?
I had to go in there. I turned my phone back on the 4th the next day because Pauly was actually supposed to be coming out to my cousins for the 4th of July party. So we had family gathering, and I just stayed out there because I needed time to process, reflect. And I was surrounded by friends and family that didn't treat me like I was going through stuff and let me deal with it in my own way.
Yeah, and I can imagine, like any other 14-year-old, I'm sure he was looking towards the fireworks and everything else. So you get the news. Did you have to, who from your family had to go down and identify? I know they dismembered him, but how did they didn't make you do that? Did you have to go down and? No,
they said they identified him through DNA.
They did, okay. And did that happen fairly quickly?
Well, they had him identified the week before.
Oh, wow.
Because they started pulling parts of him out the day after I had reported him missing.
And no one in your family knew about, so they didn't contact you guys like when they knew the week before, did they?
No, the day they started pulling parts of him out of a Golden Run up in Clark, that's the first time the state police stopped at my house and with the Sharon cops, and they said everything was all routine. They wanted his toothbrush, but his toothbrush was laying on the floor in the bathroom between the toilet and the sink.
Oh, okay.
And I had just thrown it away like maybe Wednesday of the week before.
Right.
And he had a brand new toothbrush in there, it just wasn't open yet.
Yeah. So moving on, obviously, it was how much longer was it till you found out what happened and who was accused of, killing?
It all came out in the news on the 3rd of July.
Right. Nobody called you to let you know beforehand. You found out in the news. Yeah, that's a little odd. You would think that they would.
His mother was informed, which kind of surprised me. I was the one that reported him missing. He lived with me. Him and his younger brother lived with me. Well, and she has barely been in his life the last year that they've lived with me.
Right. And you had custody of.
We had a domestic agreement through a civil agreement through domestics. She was being civil and she told them, and stopped the collection for support from me. And it was on record in domestics, but since it wasn't through the courts, well, I don't know what's going on there. It's something I have to talk to a lawyer about.
Right. Well, regardless, moving on, with the story, it's quite apparent that the guy that they had, it looks like it's like 99.99, if not 100% sure that they have the right person in custody, and it's my understanding
they do.
You had actually moved or went to court for the preliminary hearing. Was that the first time that you ever saw him?
Yes.
And tell us how his demeanor was. Did you notice his face or anything? Did he look ice cold? It was just He
looked lost. He looked lost, dead inside. He's got his own demons, so to speak, that he has to deal with.
Right.
But he made eye contact with nobody.
Wow. Yeah, maybe the judge and his lawyer, and that's probably it.
Yeah.
So another thing you told me while we were talking off air, that this whole process is going to take, close to, you said at least a year, right? That we're talking about before this whole trial starts up. It's going to be minimum of a year. You were saying?
Yeah, it'll be another 2 months before his arraignment. The DA said, but they have a pretty solid case against him.
Yeah, I did read that they were thinking about adding some charges. Did you hear anything about that?
Yeah, they did. They added a couple of charges.
Yeah. What's the main charge? And then obviously
murder one's the main charge.
Murder one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm sure they want to leave other things on the table to make sure this guy gets what he deserves. And if we without saying, we have to say alleged with this alleged guy doing what he did. If that's what he did, everybody, I think, would say it's a shame we don't have the death penalty. And I'm not I'm not pro death penalty, but there's certain cases, man, where when you go above and beyond, like just killing somebody, I mean, that's an evil act. It just,
it's also something that he has to live with.
Yeah.
It's going to stick with him too.
So there's nothing new or able to share anything new with the public as far as what's going on with with the trial, with that. Any new news that you were informed in that you think the public might be interested in knowing about?
I mean, it was all in the paper. It got bound over to Mercer County, and the next step's the arraignment, where they'll read the charges and then it gets sent to call on the list. I think they said it was.
Right. Well, I apologize, kind of just briefly going through that really quick. I think the most important thing, here is that, we know, what you know about Pauly. He sounds like a wonderful young man. And
he's an amazing kid.
And with, like I said, right now there's a lot of confusion, and I think the general public is confused. I've personally said, we had the Mercer County LGBTQ Association, which, that's great that they're there to, be advocates for people. And, I've always said nobody deserves to be hurt for who they are. Nobody deserves to get beat up, especially killed. I was a little shocked when they announced that this was, a murder based upon, Pauly being transgender. And I'm saying, well, how could they even know that yet? That, they just literally found out information. So I think a lot of the confusion right now in the public is because we're starting to see like these two schools of thought. And I think ultimately both parties, one thinks one way, one thinks the other way. And we'll talk about that in a second. I think we want the memory of Pauly to live on. And when all this is said and done, hopefully down the road, there can be some sort of a scholarship fund or something that can be done in, remembrance of Pauly Likens. But what's going on? Is there anything that you can add, that you can explain to the public? Like, and listen, this is not about being judgmental about who Pauly was, but
I judge nobody.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
It gets confusing. It does get a little confusing when you have two parents saying two different things. So let's just hear what your version is of who Pauly was. So Pauly, because I don't want to be disrespectful. I know I see a lot of things like say her name.
Yeah.
You're saying Pauly was born a boy.
Yeah.
And he was a young man, correct?
And he passed away a boy.
Okay. So
he was my son.
Yeah.
I knew when he was like 2-3 years old that he was different. I knew he was gay. His mannerisms, just how he presented himself, walked. When he was 13, I point point blank asked him, I said, "Are you gay?" He said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, were you ever going to tell me?" He said, "I just figured you already knew," which I said, I did, but.
Right. It wasn't a defining, it didn't matter to you. You loved your son regardless,
Absolutely.
you know.
I've told him since he was a little boy, you do you.
Yep.
Be who you are. People will try to put you down and make fun of you for it, but that's because they don't have what it takes to be themselves out in public like you do and shine.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Even if he told you you were trans, you'd still love him.
Absolutely.
And that's.
But I'd explain to him what that is.
Yeah.
And we had them conversations because he was very feminine. He did his nails. I paint my nails too.
Yeah.
I'm not transgender.
Well, there's a lot of emo guys or whatever you want to call them, you know, that like to paint their nails. That doesn't. I don't think that is, you know, what's at stake here. What's at stake here is I think it's important to be truthful. Yeah. And you know, I think, you know, the last thing anybody wants is to create this, you know, Hatfield and McCoy's kind of fight, you know. And that's not, you know, what's important. What's important is that that young man lost his life, and exactly. You know, and we need to find justice. I mean, that's what I would like to see. Is
what they're putting out there is he got killed because he was transgender
before anybody knew anything, right?
Yeah, and you are not transgender until you start gender modification hormones, right. And he definitely wasn't starting that.
And he never told you that, correct?
No.
So yeah, it you know, again.
He had friends and other family members that called him her or she, but he just let people call him whatever they wanted. He didn't care. Just he did dress like a girl sometimes,
right?
And he dressed like a boy sometimes. It's whatever mood he was in, however he felt that day,
right?
I bought him his first purse when he was 10 years old. He said, "Dad, Mom won't let me have a purse." I said, "Well, you have a budget for clothes for school, and you want a purse, get a purse. Go spend it on what you want."
Right. And honestly, that, you know, again, you know, the fact that, you know, he's this young innocent kid, and you know, being dragged through one of the most disgusting things that can happen to anyone is getting murdered by someone, and I don't think we still don't know. I mean, I don't know how anybody in your so far in everything you've seen, has there been any thing to indicate that he was killed because he was gay or transgender that you know of? Or
they supposedly met on Grindr, which is a gay Tinder is what they call it.
Okay.
And you know, stuff like that. How a 14-year-old kid, not even just a 14-year-old kid, it's application to meet up for casual sexual encounters.
Right.
How do you not have to show an ID to show not only who you are, but how old you are?
I think you just read my mind, and they should be held somewhat accountable. I think Grindr, you can't just let, you know, anybody on there. I mean, my God, and you know that we're supposed to protect our young kids. And you know what? Listen, we were all kids. We all wanted to do bad stuff or look at bad stuff or do bad stuff in one way or another. But there's supposed to be safeguards, you know, for children. And I tell you, I think Grindr, you know, I hope, you know, when, you know, everything is said and done, you know, that organization gets looked at, because they definitely did not protect Pauly Likens. They're the ones who, you know, I think are partially also responsible. And let's, any idea if the person accused of killing your son has, did he give all the proper ID on there? Did anybody?
I have no idea. That the hearing was just the DA had to show the burden of proof, for probable cause, so that they can bind the charges. They only showed a small percentage of their case against them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure the rest is coming. Everybody.
And all the defense does at those things is object and try to get stuff thrown out. And nothing got thrown out.
Yeah. How horrific. You know, today, I mean, you can't buy a pack of cigarettes, you know, without ID. Like nobody will sell you a pack of cigarettes. It's not like in the 80s. I remember my cousin, she was like 22, and I think you had to be 18 to smoke back then. I was like 11. She'd give me a couple dollars for candy. She'd go get me a pack of cigarettes. Today, nah, you can't do that. And the fact that you can get on a site like Grindr without any ID check or verification check is just mind blowing. You know, they I think definitely will bear some responsibility, and I hope they do.
That is the legislation we should be talking about pushing through, not what Governor Shapiro and
what did he mention? What did he want to do? I did hear something about
stronger laws to protect the LGBTQ community. And
see, I was talking to a few people about that.
I know.
Isn't it kind of weird? Like, how about like we just treat all human beings the same, and then we only need one law, right?
Yep.
Like, if you're a human being, don't kill human beings, don't beat them up for whatever reason. It always
do unto others.
Yeah, well, it's a little mind blowing to think that Shapiro thinks that we need a law to protect the LGBTQ community. No, we just human beings. Just it's common sense law.
It's a whole narrative and agenda. They're pushing, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be, and that's a great point. You know, it would be nice if they push legislation to
protect our children
from these tech companies.
Delusional psychopaths.
Yeah. Yep. Well, guys, you know, if you want to have a memory or something, if it's okay with Mr. Likens, if you want to call and say something to Mr. Likens, you're more than welcome to, if he's okay with it.
Absolutely.
I did see the phone ring a couple times. We're not going to take any calls till the news break at 30. So we have a few more minutes. And, there's I know we're kind of jumping around and I do want to go back to what's one of your favorite memories with you and your son that I'm sure everybody's kind of got one or up to three or so. What's one that I'm sure after all this happened you started thinking about?
When my friend Tanya, she flew us out to the Outer Banks for our vacation. It was the first time either one of us saw the ocean.
Oh, wow.
But the first time we were both on a plane, too. I think we got to experience that together. But we were taking off. There was a layover in D.C., and we were taking off, and he looked at me and said, "Dad, what's the name of that big white building the president lives in?" And I said, are you serious right now? I said, I'm not even answering that.
That's funny.
That always makes me laugh. I have a couple photos from that plane ride, too. He's a silly kid.
And, it just goes to show you kids today really don't care about politics. And, they're into...
It kind of also shows what they're not being taught in school.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole separate story, what they're trying to do at school. But kids want to go outside. They want to play. They want to have fun. They want to do things that they love to do. And, what are some of the, besides like walking, did he have any hobbies or sports that he liked or anything, throughout the years that he enjoyed?
He was never big on sports. Crystals. He loved crystals. Go crystal hunting. Ever since he could walk.
Nice.
Anytime we'd go out and about, he'd find the coolest rock, and he'd give it to me. And to this day, I still go out and collect rocks. Rocks are cool.
I'm sure you got a couple of those
do.
lying around at home. I'm sure people would love to see those. And I guess you put them in a tumbler. Is that where you find, or is it the kind that you find a rock? I know some people put them in tumblers and try to shine them up a little bit.
We were working on getting a wet saw and tumbler because there's a lot of rocks in my house.
Oh, yeah.
and we were gonna do stuff with them, but
nice.
I'll still do stuff.
Yeah, maybe that's something the community can work on getting for you, because that'd be cool just to take those rocks and turn them into something a little bit more shinier and more beautiful. Well, listen, we're going to come back. We're going to take our news break here, and appreciate you bringing in your mother and your sister into the studio. We did welcome them to talk, so if they do want to talk, they're more than happy to talk about Pauly and about some memories they have of Pauly. So we are going to take our news break. You're listening to News Talk 790 WPIC. In the studio, we have Paul Liken Sr. Talking about the tragic murder of his son, Pauly Likens. We'll be right back right after this short break. And welcome back in the studio, Mr. Paul Liken Sr., talking about the tragic death of his son, Pauly Likens. One thing we were talking off air again, I always say sometimes we get way more info off air than on air. For those of you that don't realize, if you ever have a family member that is, murdered, there's a process for the body to be released. And in this case, you know, whatever they have right now of you know, Pauly, you know, for a funeral. And you know, that is something that, you know, I hope in the very near future that Pauly has, because I think there's a lot of people in the community that would like to come out and pay their respects to this young man, because this is something that nobody in Mercer County wants. You know, nobody would even dream that this would happen here in Mercer County. And you were saying that once you and your, I should say ex-wife, right? Not wife, technically ex-wife. So once in your Pauly's mom and yourself agree on a funeral home, is that how it'll work? Then you guys can have a funeral for Pauly?
Yeah, but she's not communicating with me.
Okay.
She has never communicated with me the entire time I've known her, honestly.
Well, I hope whatever, like I said, we're not, the last thing I think I made myself clear, and I just want everybody to know, honestly, you know, what you and your, you know, Pauly's mom had went through is devastating for both of you guys. And regardless of what your feelings are for the interpretations of, you know, each of your facts, you know, I hope that we can get Pauly a nice burial, and you know, that'll come together, because I'm sure there's many people in this community that would like to pay their respects to this young man. Have you had an opportunity to talk to any of his friends? Because I can't even imagine, you know, what's going on through their heads. You know, you see your friend one day and he's gone the next. Have you had that opportunity?
I've talked to a few when they had that vigil at their little political stunt down there at their alliance. I went down with my family, and when we went down, we were asked to leave. We were asked to leave because on Junior's birthday, the 6th of July, I went to pick up his younger brother Michael from his mom's, because I hadn't seen him since the day I reported Junior missing. And I went out to see him. I asked him if he was ready to come home. He said, yeah. And I said, come on. And when I opened the door, his mom, her daughter, her friends, and her daughter's boyfriend all jumped on me, ripping Mikey out of my arms. Her daughter's boyfriend was punching me in the head.
Wow.
And they took Mikey, ran him into another apartment. And because it's a civil agreement for custody, whoever the kid is with, they have physical custody at that time.
Right.
So then the following Monday, I went out to Mercer and filed custody paperwork for Michael. Upon receiving that paperwork on Tuesday morning, his mother went and filed a PFA against me.
And tell everybody what that is, so people who are unfamiliar with that.
I believe it's a protection from abuse order, which
like a restraining order.
Yeah, kind of. It's, if you know me, that's just ludicrous. But she filed that after she got custody paperwork in retaliation. And then they had their little candlelight vigil thing, which was supposed to be for my son, but nobody that spoke that thing even knew my son. And all they kept bringing up was the alliance and their movement.
Yeah,
and their narrative agenda. But when I went in, my ex-wife's friend saw me and my family come, and we came in the back. That way we were far enough away. And apparently the PFA is I'm not allowed to be anywhere that she is. And she didn't even know I was there. It was her friend that went up and told the cops, and they made me leave. And I left peacefully.
Yeah,
I did yell he was my son, and I was the only one that knew him because I spoke to him every day.
Yeah.
None of my wife, her family, his sister knew him. His aunt Liz on his mom's side. They knew him pretty well. He loved them.
Yes.
He did not have a good relationship with his mother.
Yeah, and you know, it's such a hard thing to deal with. Listen, I hope I'm going to pray for you guys, and I'm going to pray that mom and you can somehow come to some sort of peace and
she has
move forward. Well, listen, I'm sure. And
welcome back. So, I hope with those videos and the ones with Paul, I hope they really helped. to gain an understanding of our area, of our unfortunate situations that we live through every day. I hate to use the word proof, because, you know, people shouldn't feel so pressured to prove it. I do. And I feel there's an obligation to that sometimes. Like, I don't want proof from other people. If they're going to tell me their story, I'm going to believe them. Face value. Because we talk about affirmation all the time. This family is not getting it. As you can see, they're begging for it. And everybody's ignoring them. They're not acknowledged. They're not... lots of people tell them, oh, I'm sorry for what you went through. But every source of media, it's a good story. And in the days that are not happening, you don't see anybody reaching out to them. I talk to my friend every day. Sometimes not every day, because there are some things I need to do. Like, my puppy needed emergency surgery on Saturday, and oh my goodness, my brain was elsewhere. She had a infection in her uterus, and, you know, I never spayed her because I don't have any other dogs. I never saw the need. And she's 13. It's not like she's gonna have puppies, but she's old, and she got an infection, and she was breathing really fast. So I called her vet, brought her in, and they said she needs surgery now or she's not gonna make it. And I was like freaking out a little bit, like, just felt like I was going to fall apart because the amount of money it cost. Thankfully, this vet is very kind. They're cheaper than most. And they got me in touch with a credit company. Not that anybody wants another bill, but I'd rather have my dog than money. And she survived the surgery. I'm actually going to go get her today. So she's been there for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it's Tuesday, for 4 days. And this afternoon I'll be picking her up. She's eating, she's drinking, the vet's been texting me. I'm just glad that she's okay. Our children are very glad that she's okay, because, I mean, she's our puppy. We've had her since she was a baby. But anyway, the point is, like, you don't see people, you know. I would love it if a church would say, let's do a benefit for Pauly. Nor to do anything. This family is the one having to ask. And they don't want to ask. They feel like, you know what, fine. If you guys don't care, we'll do it ourselves. They're making their own bracelets. They're making their own shirts. They're not even charging for them. You see people making shirts and charging for them. And even when a family member actually said something to them saying, please stop using Pauly to profit, this person actually yelled at her. Like, she's a family member. You don't yell at them. You don't sit on Facebook, of all things. So, you know, it's public. And she's telling her what a scum person she is for telling her not to sell these shirts. And the family said, but we're making them for free. Even though technically they should have some compensation for the materials. They won't accept it. I did the same thing. I don't want to sound, you know, I hate doing this, because whenever I say anything about myself, I feel like it's some kind of brag. And I'm not trying to. So that makes me reluctant to say anything at all. But because I do my business and I make a lot of wood objects, I have the ability to engrave. So I was trying to help them, you know, grieve. They need to grieve. So I made them plaques with Pauly's name and his picture. This engraved into wood. And, you know, they wanted to give me money for them, but I told them no. Because I don't want to profit either. Feels really wrong. That made me feel very uncomfortable. Paul even wanted to put my business out there, and I said, no, please don't. I feel like I'd be no better than those other people, and I can't do that. I've considered using the frame for other things, but I haven't done it just because I feel, again, I made that for them. It's special. I don't want it to be made multiple times. I want it to be made for that. Because they deserve that. They need that. They need people to come together and offer to help. There is not a church on this planet that I think would say no if they asked. But honestly, where are the people coming to them saying, hey, let us hold a benefit for you? My friend stabbed herself because she has tremors and seizures. So she's making these bracelets with really sharp needles. She ended up stabbing herself because in her tremors, she ended up stabbing right through her finger. And I said to her, why don't you ask a church to hold like a gathering that you can bring the beads and, you know, you guys can just have a little benefit where people come to make bracelets for Pauly to support him, and they'll make their own, and you guys can just talk about them. And she said, I would love to do that, but it's hard to reach out to people. It's so much work. You know, I'll just make them. I'll just do it myself. And I feel terrible. Like, this family lost a child, and they're the only ones doing anything for it. As if, you know, people have even sent them messages saying, where's my shirt? Like, woman, back up. I can't even be nice about that one. It's if these people were, you know, this family's, they lost a child, now they're obligated to give people things. Excuse me, no they don't. I'm sorry. They're not obligated to do anything. They should be left alone to grieve, and everybody should be doing for them. And nobody's doing for them. Except them. They are doing for themselves. You don't see a community coming together for this. Not even the Alliance. They post up things here and there. But I don't see another thing about that. My children are in Taekwondo. I'd actually talked with one of the masters because I was trying to explain to him, you know, who Pauly was. Because he wanted to do self-defense classes. And he'd actually shared with me that, you know, quite a few people come in and they said, you know, the Alliance had actually told them that because of who they are, they could be attacked. I mean, I'm sure that's true in some sense, but they used Pauly as an example. And Pauly was not attacked for the way he looked. I don't know how clear anybody can be. Even during the courts, never once. They never, ever used the word transgender. They never used the word female. Nothing. Please listen to Paul's interview. Beyond what I had clipped there. I mean, that's the basic beginning. Please listen to Paul's video. It is so informative. And he's able to talk about his child the way people should have from the beginning. You know, most people lose a kid and they talk about their kid. This has always been about what Pauly looks like. And it shouldn't be that way. So I hope this was informative. Again, apologies on the length, but again, this time I had to shove some extra in there. And I hope this helps. Please, you know, if you have time, reach out to the family, express your condolences. He's been gone since June. They found out in July, a couple days before his would-be 15th birthday. And again, through social media. The cops didn't come to tell them. What a terrible way to find out your child not only is dead, but dismembered and spread across the valley, when actually they've been told the entire time it wasn't him. Because when they first started finding pieces, the family went straight there, and the cops told them it's an older male. It's not him. It's not him. You don't know what you're doing. And then they cordoned off the canoe launch, and it's not about Pauly. It's not about Pauly. And then, a couple days later, bam, right on the news. It was about Pauly the entire time. I get the police keeping information to themselves, you know, for the sake of the investigation. But for the love of God, if you're going to flat out tell the family that nothing that they believe is true, and then go on news and say, yeah, it is, we got a problem. So, please, you know, click the links, view the videos in their entirety, send your condolences. They deserve to be heard. They are the family. And nobody deserves more attention than they do. So please do so. You know, if you have time, just a simple Facebook message, I'm sorry for your loss. You know, it's not a reminder. They want to hear about Pauly. They don't want to hear about the murder. They want to hear about Pauly. They want to hear, you know, he was a great kid. Seemed like a great kid. Looks great, like a great kid. You know, I heard your family. I heard Paul speak. You know, sounds like he was a kid of anybody's dream. You know, if you were a parent and you wanted a kid, that was the kid. Not saying compare your children, but, you know, he was a great kid. Tell them so. They want to hear about Pauly. They don't want to hear about the news. I know one aunt in particular is just really sick and tired of seeing the murderer's face. Why is he getting all this attention? He did this horrible crime. I don't even like saying his name. But this should be about Pauly. Because he's not here. I kept myself together during this video. I'm going to chalk that up to a win. Alright. Thank you all for your time. You know, stay safe out there. Do what you want to do for you. Alright, see you later.